In this video, we'll be discussing the IP Office System Status application. This application is used to take a real-time snapshot of what your phone system is doing and its current status. This is an invaluable tool to your system administrator for troubleshooting purposes. When you first open up the program, you are presented with this login screen. You will need to know the IP address of your phone system and a username and password that can access the System Status application. Typically, the manager username has access to the System Status application. In this instance, we are going to log in as the administrator. Once you've logged on, you are presented with the system screen. You'll notice that you have a column on the left, which can be expandable out and looks somewhat like a Windows Explorer window. And on the right, you have detailed information about what is highlighted from the left. You start with the system screen. This is an inventory of the hardware on your phone system. You'll see that we have an IP500 system, and here's our current firmware level. This system, all 4 slots of the base phone system are being used. You'll notice that we have one daughter card. Daughter cards are trunk modules, either T1 PRI cards or 4-port analog POTS cards. Most base cards can handle either of the trunk daughter cards. The IP500 version 1 has 8 expansion modules. You'll see that we are only using 1. So this snapshot right here tells us what our expansion possibilities are for the system. This gives us the same breakdown that we saw in the overview. But now we can look on a per port basis to see what extension is assigned to which port. And whether there is anything plugged into them. Here you see a list of our IP phones. The Alarms tab will bring up information about current alarms or past alarms on the system. Here we see the last date and time that the system was restarted. It was restarted because a configuration was saved by the administrator. If we had any configuration errors, they would appear here. Periodically in a network system, while the systems are being rebooted, you'll see a configuration error stating that extension numbers conflict with remote systems. This is nothing to be concerned with. This is because the remote system has a log of the extensions from the current system. Once the alarm is cleared, as long as it does not return, there is no problem. Here we see an error that the system failed to load a music on hold source file. The system loads the music on hold source file at reboot. This system is set to load 2 different music on hold source files, but only one of which is present on the server. We can clear this alarm by highlighting the alarm and pressing clear. Here we see trunk alarms. In this instance, we have PRI lines coming into the system. You'll see that at this time, this trunk was out of service. Our 24-hour performance history shows the errored seconds we had on that line at that time. Now, this system was rebooted at that time, so this alarm was generated while the system tried to resynchronize with the circuit. To tell if there is still a problem, we would highlight the alarm and clear it. If the alarms go away, the problem has been resolved. We do not recommend clearing any alarms in your system until you've had an administrator take a look at them, because they could be indicative of a larger problem, particularly with the trunk lines. If we click the extensions we get a list of all the extensions on the system and an overview of those extensions. Home extension number is the extension number assigned to the port on the system. Since phones can be hot desked and logged in and out from different desks without removing their home extension number, you will sometimes see the home extension number is different than the current user extension number. The current user extension number is the extension that is logged in to the phone at that port. Here you see the current user name or the associated extension. This is the module or slot that the extension appears on. Module would be an expansion module. Slot would be one of the 4 slots in the base system. And then the corresponding port number. So here we see this user is on slot 2, port 8. We can tell its telephone type is a 5420 and that it has 0 messages. Here we see this user, slot 4, port 1, also a 5420, but has 15 new messages. This phone is an IP phone. So instead of having a module and a slot number, we have an IP address and a MAC address number. The MAC address number is a hardware fingerprint assigned to all network devices. Here we see the model of the phone. You can highlight or click on the left-hand side a specific number to bring up more detailed information about that user. Or you can just double-click on the overview page. Here we see that this user has their forwarding turned off, but their twinning is turned on, and the number they are twinning to. We can also tell that their Do Not Disturb is off and their message waiting light is off because they have no new messages. This screen gives you a good status of the user. So in the event that the user is having any problems with their phone, by viewing this screen, you can sometimes see what the possible cause could be. Whether or not their Do Not Disturb is turned on could explain why their phone is not ringing. The Trunks tab gives us a status on all the phone line trunks coming into the system. Here we see this PRI has been idle for the past 38 minutes, and that there was one call 4 minutes ago on this line. Here we see a utilization summary of the line. All of the calls have been incoming so far. The stats are reset either when the reset button is pressed or when the phone system is rebooted. This phone system was rebooted 40 minutes ago. And here we see there are no alarms on that line. The Active Call tab will show you a list of all of the currently active calls in the system. Here we see that this extension has just gone off hook. We can double click on this call to drill into it to get some more detailed information. Your system administrator will use this to troubleshoot calling problems. Here we see the phone number that was dialed, the short code in the system that it matched to be able to route the call, and whether or not that call was redirected or forwarded from another destination. Here we see detailed information about the line signaling for the call. Once again, this will be used by your system administrator to troubleshoot any problems with calls. The Resources tab gives you an overview of the utilization of resources on your system. Here we see that we have 64 VCM channels. VCM is voice compression module channels. A voice compression module channel is needed for every IP-based telephone call. We are currently using 0 of them, so our usage is at 0% and our congestion count is also at 0. If we had used up all 64 and a 65th request came in, our congestion count would go up by 1. Our VM shows our voicemail ports. Here we have 4 voicemail ports, which means we can have 4 simultaneous calls into the voicemail. These are either calls to the auto attendant, calls being left in users' mailboxes, or users checking their mailboxes, or calls being recorded. Here we see that we have 0 of them in use, and once again our congestion count is 0. If at any point we see the congestion count go up, especially to a significant number, we may have to consider adding more voicemail ports. Here are our conference resources. This system can have 128 calls conferenced in. This can be done in two 64-person conference bridges, or 64 individual 2-person conferences, or any combination thereof. We currently have 0 in use. If we expand out resources, we can click on licenses. And now we can see all of the licenses assigned to our system. Again, this is more for your administrator's purposes. Here's the directory tab, which lists all of the users and groups in the system. Here you can see that we have hunt groups and we have users. Source of entry is local. If this system was networked with other systems, you would be able to see their users here, and their source of entry would show up as the remote system. Current location would show where that user is logged in, if that user logged into multiple phones in multiple buildings across the network. Our control unit audit brings up a list of all of the changes done to the system. It shows us what the event was, a brief idea of what was changed, and what the outcome was. It tells us the account that was used to access it, the computer's IP address, and the computer's login name. So if a change is made to the system that has an adverse effect, we can go in here to see what that change was and when. On the voicemail tab, we see once again any active voicemail ports and how many are currently in use. We can click on the mailboxes button and bring up a list of all of the users in the system, which then gives us some more details on the mailbox itself. For instance, we see that this user has their voicemail status turned on, which means they will receive voicemails. They do not have Hunt Group Broadcast turned on. They are receiving a copy of their voicemails in their email to this email address. They are not utilizing the text-to-speech option, and they have 1 new message, 2 old messages, and 4 saved messages. At any point, you can click on the top column to sort by that column. Here we see this user has 28 saved messages. IP networking is another field that will be utilized by your system administrator. This allows us to see the IP routes programmed into the system. These are used to access remote systems or various other internet resources. The primary fields you will be dealing with will be the Active Calls tab and the Extensions tab. Once again, to see details of a specific extension, you can double-click on the extension to drill into its current status. When you are finished, simply click Log Off to exit the program. Only one person can access this program at a time. This concludes our video on the System Status application.